So people believe that credit is just imaginary money, right? And I think because it's not a physical object that you're losing, it begins to lose its value in terms of importance. And when you don't have the importance of the physical thing leaving you, your physical possessions just getting extracted from you, it removes the consequences that can follow, right? So at least when there was gold at one point, the exchange was very clear, right? If you want an item, you're going to have to give me gold, you're going to have to give me, a cow, you're going to have to give me something of value and provide that thing of value, and I have to deem it valuable enough for whatever service or item that I plan to give you, right? But now with credit being available, you don't necessarily have that thing. I can just tell you, hey, I'll get you on the next, right? And just give me like a month to pay it, right? And now, you tell that person, they believe you, they trust you, they say, okay, cool, no problem. So you go back, and if you don't have that money, then you probably can't go back. And that's people just kind of trying to run away from their debts and, chapter 7 and start trying to get bankrupt. Or, you end up in the position where you're so in debt that you put yourself in a position that's not great, right? Where you can end up getting, in some serious, serious trouble. Nowadays, it's just garnering your wages, but back in the days, you might get, an assassin or something on your head. So when we talk about those two things and having the ability for the financial side to give you an opportunity to just spend that and use that credit at such a young age and not have the direct consequences of that credit be necessarily physical and direct in that way, unless unless they start sending you to jail for it. But outside of that, they can never collect their money if they send you to jail. So now you're in that position, and some people are like, well, the government may catch me or something along those lines. And now we have a situation where the market gets saturated because those of us that have been in the market a little bit longer and have accrued such massive debts are stuck in the job market because they have to pay off those debts. Hold on. And being stuck causes you to be in workforce longer, and it removes the opportunities for those that are trying to come up behind you in order to leverage their skills and what they learned in college and in their trade. And now it causes for a bottleneck of people not leaving in the way that they're coming. And the opposite, people coming in, there are also not people leaving at that same rate. And when you see that happen, employers start to say, well, I got to start targeting the group that I don't know. And they begin to deem us as unemployable, right? Without even giving us the proper chance in order to use the degree that we took huge amounts of debts for and to actually apply the skills that we learned, due to the fact that college has become less about the education and more about creating an environment that provides the most money. It changes the whole narrative. Now going to college is just a place where you can send your kids off to learn something, but they're really there to just socialize and party. And like, that's the part that you have to understand early too, is that college is a networking thing. It's not just about your books, right? Because at the end of the day, your degree can only take you so far, especially if you're not coming out with anything higher than like a 3.5 out of college. You're really getting to a point where you can't really leverage that degree in the same way. So you got to leverage that network. But now those that are even at that level with those degrees, they're even deemed unemployable just because of the narrative in the media. And this is what the video that we're going to be watching is going to be kind of talking about. So let's get into it.
Bureau of Labor Statistics. New Gen Z workers make up the highest share of the unemployed in nearly 40 years, with only 30% of recent graduates securing full-time jobs in their field of study. Yet despite 98% of HR leaders claiming they struggle to find talent, 89% refuse to hire Gen Z, raising the question, why is the most educated generation in history becoming ghosted by minimum wage jobs? Well, you'd think that with each modern generation facing a worse job market than their parents, with nearly half of the entire workforce unable to afford even a minimal quality of life, that as Gen Z voices their frustrations over facing the worst entry-level job market in nearly 4 decades, the worst layoffs since the Great Recession, the second straight year of historic job revisions, the majority of H-1B approvals actually going to entry-level positions, only to then be told the job market has never been stronger, that all of this decay would finally be enough to force a nation to confront a system that has failed generation after generation. But instead, society refuses to evolve, dismissing it all as laziness and entitlement.
They don't want to work. They're spoiled brats. They've grown up in a world where it's everyone gets a trophy generation, and like the idea of showing up and going through traffic and being at the office at 8:45 and working till 6, they look at you like you got 10 heads.
First of all, who endorsed that mindset? Right? You guys have to keep in mind, we didn't just, first of all, I definitely didn't grow up that way. Second of all, the incentives and the removal of that level of competition was due to those in positions of power at that time, and encouraging people to be this inclusive, having this inclusive mindset, having this idea of there's never a loser, when at the end of the day, people got to understand that there are losers in this world. And if you lose, you got to be able to lose properly, but you always want to strive to win. And when you do that and create that mindset, and now you want to blame the generation for that, what does that say about you? How did you guys want to instill this mindset and now try and say it's a bad thing? Come on.
They think everything's on a silver platter, so it's very hard to motivate these people. They're
No
really
incentives.
lazy, entitled losers.
So while Gen Z will apparently be forced to endure the same stereotypes as every previous generation, the reality is that this employment crisis largely stems from the complete gutting of entry-level jobs. Despite overwhelming evidence that AI is nowhere near fully automating the job market, with MIT finding that 95% of generative AI pilots at companies are failing, alongside the majority of AI layoffs now resulting in rehires, a survey of more than 600 recruiters worldwide, with over half coming from Fortune 100 or Fortune 500 companies, found that 1/3 of employers are nevertheless replacing entry-level jobs with AI. Even if those responses were simply an attempt to inflate investor confidence and boost stock prices, a separate Resume.org survey found that by 2027, 47% of employers expect to eliminate entry-level roles entirely, which means that whether AI actually works and unemployment skyrockets, or it completely backfires and results in a reduction in household wealth worse than 2008, the outcome remains the exact same as it always has. The burden falls on the generation entering the workforce. To better understand the long-term repercussions eliminating entry-level jobs has on Gen Z and the future of the job market, I spoke with Brian Creeley, a corporate recruiter, hiring manager, HR professional for some of the world's largest companies, career coach, and creator of the YouTube channel, A Life After Layoff.
The funnel into an organization is really supposed to be, you give people the baseline opportunities to not only just learn the technology and demonstrate those skills so that they can move into more advanced roles in an organization, but it's also to learn corporate culture. That base level is, you're supposed to be sitting in those meetings with the more senior people and taking notes and observing through osmosis. And if they're going to eliminate that entire thing, what is the leadership going to look like? The senior level positions in an organization in 5 years, in 10 years. At the same time, they're also eliminating the middle managers. So,
you know, it's crazy. I do think that there's companies relying on their experienced workers to just never leave, right? Like they're relying on these people to stay in the workforce till 70, 80, 90, until the point where not working in your older years is not an option, right? And I know people are saying, especially those, in the older generation, they're saying, well, I mean, technology has made it so easy for me to work. I mean, why do I need to stop? Right? And a lot of the people that are in these senior positions have the ability to use their technology, work from home, use their seniority to say, hey, like, during COVID, I was working from home. I performed in a pretty well state. So now I should be able to continue working from home because it doesn't necessarily lead to a detriment to the company. So now it removes the incentives even for the mentors and those that are supposed to actually train the younger generation. It removes the incentives for them to even be in the office. Because then at the end of the day, they can just stay home, still produce the work and still produce the financial capabilities that their roles entail and not have to worry about training some younger person because they have the AI models and the stupid PowerPoint trainings. And now you're kind of stuck like, yo, like, I kind of wanted to know the ins and outs of the trade, right? One thing that I even learned just being in Men's Warehouse, right? That was one of my first jobs. I had this manager or lead that had been working there for a very long time. And he took me under the ropes and really taught me how to properly sell, right? There were certain things, even just selling a suit, that translated over into other parts of business that because he was there and had been selling suits for over 20, 30 years, when there was actual commissions and incentives to sell a suit, those skills were able to actually get passed down and the training was worth it, right? Because at the end of the day, that insider knowledge, being able to connect with people, being able to leverage the conversation to lead to something further down the line, that's something that, unless you're taught and the ins and outs and understand what it is, even though you have YouTube and things like that, having that in-person training is completely different, right? He would be with me at certain times when I'm making certain sales and jump in and out just to show me like, yo, like, when this person says like, oh, like this tie is looking like really good, like I really like this tie, you leverage that and say, you know what, it's actually going to work well with that tie. Let me show you this pin over here or this pocket square over here so that it can match the tie and now it heightens your outfit, right? Or let me get you this suit jacket that's also going to complement this tie in order for you to say, you know what, the ladies are going to think you're a GQ model, bro. Like, you start hitting them with stuff, and those little details that boost people's confidence and builds those extra connections, you lose when senior management is at home on their computer and just saying, figure it out with the PowerPoint slides.
It's like you're being squished. And now you've got these senior level people. These executives are loving it because they get to, they get to make money rain, they get their bonuses and all this stuff. But I don't know if they're actually thinking through the big picture of you're eliminating the development of the youngest generations, and you're also eliminating the middle manager positions for these senior level people to move into. So now you're basically creating a single band of people who are stuck in a very narrow range of roles. That's not entry level, that's not leadership, it's in between. And then you've got this executive kind of like sitting up in an ivory tower making these decisions. So what's it going to look like in 10 years from now when there is that crunch and now all these senior executives are retiring?
And while the lack of investment and gutting of entry-level jobs existed long before the AI race, the unfortunate reality is Gen Z is also competing for these limited positions against older, more experienced, and overqualified workers being forced to accept entry-level pay. According to Stanford's Digital Economy Lab, employment among Gen Z workers aged 22 to 25 declined by 16% in the occupations most exposed to artificial intelligence, while older workers in those same occupations continued filling those roles instead. Today, 2/3 of all entry-level roles are filled by workers with over 7 years of work experience, while 61% of full-time entry-level positions require 3 to 5 years of experience. The Federal Reserve suggests this could be the result of decades of career and wage stagnation, as traditional routes for career advancement, such as job hopping, now provide little financial benefit, ultimately creating a compressed career ladder where 52% of graduates are underemployed within a year of graduation, while a study by the Burning Glass Institute found that 73% will remain underemployed a decade later.
The candidate who's coming into that interview, who maybe had that capability, who has that competency, who has that potential, just doesn't have a resume to prove it, now has that stigma going against them of like, well, you're not hireable. You're not good. You're not going to be a good fit for us. Because I've heard those conversations. I've heard hiring managers making stories up about people based on what's on their resume or what they've achieved in the past. And they start creating these stories. Well, this guy's not hireable. This guy's not promotable. He didn't get promoted at his last job. If he was truly a high performer, why didn't this other company or these other two companies ever recognize their capability? And I would like look at them and say, like, how do you know what this person has or hasn't done or is capable of without even looking at them? Just you're telling a story. Maybe the whole story isn't on a piece of paper. Maybe the whole story isn't my bias toward what I think this candidate's career should have looked at like, because when I started my career, things looked a lot different.
And to prove just how deep the stigma actually is, LinkedIn's own algorithm has been shown to suppress profiles with employment gaps, while ATS services and job platforms suppress or automatically reject applicants working lower wage jobs such as grocery store clerks or restaurant servers because in the eyes of many employers, they signal class, resulting in a labor market where Gen Z is fundamentally trapped in a cycle of low-paying jobs with little opportunity for advancement.
I mean, I do, but like, I just don't understand how you look at a resume and you say, okay, this kid is 18, 19, let's say 22, just came out of college. And let's say he's just working regular job at, Home Depot or something, right? What did you expect him to do right out of college? What other jobs did you really expect him to get right out of that position? Because at the end of the day, I have to start somewhere. There's nothing else that I can do unless I get like some kind of license or some kind of additional trade, which I think is something that most young people are going to have to do in order to, let's say, capitalize, especially those that are coming up now. In order for you to capitalize on your actual degree and maybe make yourself stand out a little bit, is try and get a certification in something. Try and get a license in something. Try and just get an additional skill or trade that you can use to leverage to say, hey, like I'm not only going to school, I'm working, but I'm also studying to get a license in this particular field, or I'm studying to work in this particular trade. And it may allow you to not only get more potential job opportunities, but it can also lead to a position where the employer is like, okay, like I can see you're putting in the extra effort, you're putting in the work, you're putting in the time to gain other skills relative to the field, and it's going to start to help you in the future, right? So these are the kind of things that you're going to have to start using in order to kind of separate yourself in the market. But at the end of the day, this is where working twice as hard in order and for less of the incentives, it makes no sense. It makes no sense to do so.
Today, Gen Z accounts for 55% of all multiple job holders, the highest share of any generation in well over a decade, leaving 83% reporting burnout, while 61% have delayed or avoided preventative health screenings. And while I totally understand delaying medical care due to the concern of cost or time, take it from me, someone who was told by 2 separate doctors that spitting up blood was not an issue and almost died in his apartment due to actually having undiagnosed factor V, that your health is the most important thing in your life, which is why I'm very grateful to be partnered with today's sponsor, ZocDoc. ZocDoc is the leading healthcare marketplace that has more than 150,000 providers within 200 plus specialties across all 50 states, making it easy for you to find and book the healthcare provider that fits your needs. Each month, millions of people use their completely free service via ZocDoc.com or the ZocDoc app to search for care and book instantly. ZocDoc's website has tons of reviews from real patients and detailed doctor profiles, so you can feel confident in making the right decision. And unlike other services, you can actually see appointment openings and click to instantly book, with appointments usually happening within 24 to 72 hours or even on the same day. Please do not let a health emergency be your wake-up call to prioritize your health. And I know that it may seem small, but just clicking the link in the description and exploring the care for you is a huge step towards valuing your health. So head over to ZocDoc.com/Damon Cassidy to get started and check that appointment off your to-do list. Thank you, ZocDoc, for partnering with the channel.
At least even an ad on YouTube. Like, you get quality content before you start smacking me in the face with an ad. Like, come on.
And unfortunately, just as millennials were told to simply learn to code, rather than having an honest conversation about collapsing entry-level jobs, crushing student loan debt, competition against older workers, rampant automation, and the rising cost of living, society's solution for Gen Z has simply become go into the trades. Despite having spent years covering the decline of vocational education and the stigma surrounding blue-collar work, I still believe the trades are an excellent career path for many people, but pretending that they can absorb an entire generation will only recreate the exact same bottlenecks that white-collar workers are already facing. A new Wallet Hub study, ranking the best and worst entry-level jobs in America, found that trade careers dominate the bottom of the list based on immediate opportunity, growth potential, and job hazards, while also ranking among the nation's least happy occupations.
All right, so let's see. So,
but more importantly, job hazards, while all
right, so unhappiest electrician? Wow. I would have never thought that. Well, I guess the opportunity and the amount of repairs that electricians do are probably a little bit less. I mean, you're going to be wiring stuff all the time. Psychiatric aid. I mean, you get in hell all day. Social worker, construction worker. Wow, some of these video game quality tester? Whoa, what do they do? I'm shocked. Well, I'm assuming you're gonna just get all the bugs and all the trash out of the game, so doesn't really help, or at least make the job fun, because you're playing all the trash in the games, but wow. Okay.
Also ranking
game developers, though, they're the happiest. I mean, the way that these games are pumping out, of course they're happy. They get to just use AI most of the time and then, give you BS games that don't even make sense. And at least the indie games are moving up in the world right now. But dog photographer. If you make good money doing that, I mean, you're just shooting pictures of dogs all day.
Among the nation's least happy occupations. But more importantly, nearly every single one of my friends who are in the trades have recently been telling me that if they were to enter their trade today, without their years of experience, their industry connections, or overall reputation, they are convinced they would not be able to find a job because of increased competition and an overall economic downturn in their industry. So while Gen Z has effectively become the test dummies for AI in both classrooms and entry-level careers, only to be turned around and called lazy and entitled, despite working more jobs simultaneously than any previous generation, with society's only real solution becoming go into the trades, it is crucial that if we care at all about the future of our nation and the children who have no idea the economy they're about to inherit, we begin having honest conversations about how to actually course correct before another generation is forced to pay an even worse price.
Unfortunately, I know people are not going to want to hear this, but I think that this is going to be the new norm. Like, I don't think that we're going to return to a job market. Like, some people are like holding out, like, well, eventually things will improve. They may, because things break completely and you have to rebuild, but like, what's the pain involved in that? That's a much bigger, like, Great Depression level kind of event. I know some people will throw out like, well, we just need universal basic income. I have my own strong opinions about that. There's not necessarily a clear end game that looks great. And like I'm not trying to be doom and gloom about this. I do think that there's still, if you take faculty of your own career, you're really driving things. You treat it like you are the CEO of a business of one. You build multiple, people don't like to hear this, but you got to build multiple streams of income so that you're not beholden to any one single paycheck and single employer.
Well, I mean, that's what you have to start creating that financial freedom, right? And at the end of the day, the incentive to create financial freedom is a lot higher now. So it's not just like you can go to work, get a job, work at that job for 20, 30 years and you'll be set for life. Unfortunately, that idea of a life is not necessarily going to work. Unless you're already in a high-paying job or a skilled trade, that I think one of the only positions that I can potentially see outside of like a game developer, like a cybersecurity analyst or something along those lines, where you're in a good high-paying position and you're able to grow within that market. If you're not able to get that, the next best thing is probably going to be nursing or medical, just because of the fact that like you're going to need the physical bodies there until I guess they try and replace them with AI. But in order for them to do that, that's going to be long in the future. So, those are probably the two, I still think, strongest trades or skills that will push forward without having to have multiple streams of income in order to gain that financial freedom, right? In order to get into a position where you're like, I'm comfortable and I don't think I have to worry about bills and, so on and so forth. Like, you really got to be able to play the game and use all your abilities in the game, right? You can't just try and rely on your physical attack, your skills, with your one skill set. You got to start using some of the spells. You got to start using some of the enhancements, and you got to start using some of the things that can help you maximize your output and maximize what you can, gain.
That you're not knee-jerk reactioning. You actually build your career with an actual strategy. There is a process to do that. And so many people do not do that, mainly because they're never taught that in university or wherever. They kind of just it's like throwing the baby bird out of the nest and saying, figure it out yourself. And most people, not surprisingly, don't really do a good job of that. But I just don't see that this is a fixable problem without there being a wholesale change in how we approach, like, and I'm not just saying like we as the job seeker, I'm saying is like society looks at what role the human being plays in where we want this society to go in the future.
And so what I hope that we're beginning to recognize is that as a society, if we have any desire to have the future be just a little bit better than today, to have the future be just a little bit better than the past 4 decades, we have to stop putting these blanketed statements on every single massive systemic decay that has been causing issues for as long as we can remember. I just cannot understand for the life of me how every generation emerging into adulthood, at least every modern generation. No, really, I mean, I'll show you, there's a quote from Plato discussing older workers or older people saying that young people are lazy. But the unfortunate reality is that as a society, instead of these older workers or each generation during their period of time, instead of pointing up at the people that are actually undercutting their wages or making them work more hours for less pay, or reducing retirement benefits, reducing paid time off, aren't able to keep up with the cost of living, or reducing health insurance benefits, you name it. Instead of pointing at the people actually doing the issues, what better person to point your fingers at than the little guy that has no power to stand up for themselves? And the biggest thing that I really cannot understand is that when you hear a hiring manager or somebody say they're traditionally in their 50s or so, the people that really have power to be making these decisions, the people on the news, pumping out these headlines, when they say the young generation is lazy and entitled, the likelihood of that 55-year-old individual saying that, having a kid that is graduating from college or already has, is unbelievably high. So are you saying the reality is that every Gen Z is lazy except for your kid? Are you saying that you had absolutely no responsibility in helping parent the future generation? How do you point at young kids and say, yeah, they're addicted to social media or to their phone? Who handed them their phone? Older adults, do we have no responsibility for the country and the reality that we're a part of? You're telling me that every single systemic decay falls on the little guy. Or falls on all these other things, right? Like a massive narrative is that the entire job market is collapsing because of minimum wage. Right? Like that is a real argument. I get that on every single one of my videos. So it's blanketed statement after blanketed statement after blanketed statement, and we fail to recognize that we are all experiencing the exact same thing.
And I do think too, like, there has to come a point where you, even at that older generation, there has to come a point where you're like, well, are they really lazy, or is there any opportunity? You know what I'm saying? Like, is there the opportunity without them built? Because you have to keep in mind, if I got to make money in order to pay my bills or in order to do anything, right, I would have to work a job, which would be the 9 to 5. But in order to create that level of income to where I could potentially save up to afford buying a house, you know, right now the average house price is what, 400,000, right? That's across the nation maybe. And in New York, it's at least $750,000. So in order for me to even have enough money for that down payment, unless it's gifted to me, I'm going to have to work a second job in order to get the income that I want, right? Or I have to stay at my parents' house a lot longer than what the previous generations had and save up my money in order to get the house that I want. So the opportunities that we have going into like the workforce are definitely not the same. Like back in the day, you could probably get an apartment for like $500, a nice studio apartment for $500, $700. Like that's a completely different environment, right? You actually can leverage the job that you have, pay your bills, and then still with the job that you have, as you're growing through your entry level position and then getting to that next mid-level position, now that $500, $900 rent that you were paying, you know, isn't as much because you were able to save along the way. You were able to save a lot more instead of what the current generation is able to save, right? And now that we're forced to work even more hours with less PTO, it starts to get to a point where it's like, yo, I can't even build that second stream of income, even if I wanted to.
The thing that makes me the most sad out of all of this is that, you know, Gen Z, as a generation, we have the opportunity to genuinely make a difference because we recognize the issue. We are at the age to where we are being vocal about it. It's kind of bad enough that we have to address it. Mm-hmm. And so what we have to do is we have to not only pay the burden of previous decades of economic mismanagement, but we also have to start envisioning the future. But the unfortunate reality is that as a generation, predominantly, again, not every single person, but predominantly, we've lost hope. We've already given up. There's a reason why Gen Z is called the nihilistic generation. And so if you've already given up and you have no hope, then we're grouped right in with every other generation.
Yeah.
And the very frustrating thing for myself, because again, like I'm going to address the systemic issues. I am then going to come on and I'm going to do something like this at the tail end of the video because I want to give you in-person, one-on-one kind of, why does this matter? And then at the end of the video, I address, hey, these are things that we can do. Now, I can't not necessarily address, hey, here's how you face decades of economic, destruction of entry-level jobs. There isn't just a solution I can give you for that. And I hope that you kind of recognize that there are individual things that you could do to help better your opportunities of getting a job. Like Brian with a Life After Layoff has plenty of those things on his channel. But what I do here is I just try to talk about the systemic issue. And to be able to fix a systemic issue, because we're not the ones writing the policy and we're not the ones making the corporate decisions, is we have to change our attitude and our desire to make things better. We are the ones that have each other's hands around each other's throats. We're the ones not making decisions in our own lives. And so what I do is,
Well, I also think too that when you are in a position that is comfortable, and even those that are excelling at that rate, you start to have the idea of like, yo, like this is about me. Like I made it. Like I'm out of here. Like I'm not worried about anybody else. Like it's just me, right? Finally, you hit that point where you're like, I'm financially free. I don't have to worry about anything. Like I can just chill and do what I got to do for myself. And that's why a lot of the younger generation as well has been spending their money in a way where it's like, YOLO, like I'm getting this job, I'm making this money, I can survive on my own, and not maybe thinking about how you can further impact the society around you in a positive way so that others not only in your generation but others further down the line. And I do think there has to come a point where we start to see more Gen Z involved in politics, involved in the political scene, and start to make our way into those positions. Because at the end of the day, without the highly intelligent, without the people that can actually make policy changes ahead of time rather than it being too late, all of Congress is full of 50, 60, 70-year-old people. And it's like, at what point are they even really considering the younger generation? Like, yeah, sure, they have children, they have kids, but they already have the mindset that we're not good enough. We're too lazy. We're stuck on our phones. We're unable to separate ourselves and become something great. So they don't really care. They're just going to make policies so that they can live on longer and capitalize on their opportunity. But at some point, as a generation, we have to start saying, yo, guys, you guys are not really looking out for us right now. And we gotta follow in your footsteps, right? We gotta follow in your footsteps. So the trail that you're leaving right now is not one that's really beneficial for us. And we got to start making these changes now, or you might just lead us right off a cliff, right? So it's at a point where you're starting to see people like Nick Shirley, for example, going out there, making content, bringing to light a lot of the things that people and narratives have been pushing. Yet there's the opposite side where you start to see a little bit behind the curtain, right? You actually start to see what's going on and how the political scheme and the government is starting to impact your life in a way that is not beneficial to you, and they're not thinking about you, right? So I think that's the overall goal, is to have those and to continue to speak out, continue to create the narrative, and to continue to motivate yourself as well as others to get in a position where they can make a change, leverage their abilities, leverage their skills, and understand all the issues that are going on currently. And try and say, you know what, let's start making a change, and let's start shifting the mindset back towards mentoring those that are younger than us, training those that are in a position to do great, and competing at a high level in order to, make it. And so that for yourself, as well as the younger generation coming up, they have an opportunity, and maybe the opportunity may be better.
I say, hey, these are ways that you can do agency, and here's why you should have hope, and do this or do this. Try to look at this through your personal life. When was the last time you talked to your neighbor? When was the last time you had these conversations? And so then I offer things of, hey, make sure that you go out and vote. One of the reasons that this happened was because there was no Gen Z turnout. And then what comments do I receive? There's no point in voting. Voting doesn't do anything, so why would I waste my time?
Voting is crucial.
And so then I go into my friends, right? Because you would say, well, go touch grass. So I go talk to my friends. Not a single one of them will vote either. Okay, so voting isn't an option. So then I do something like, hey, here's a petition that we're trying to work on. This is what we're trying to do and raise awareness. And then what comments do I receive? The petition isn't going to do anything. Everything sucks. There's no hope. Why would I even waste my time? Okay.
But you see, we can't be so negative to the point where there's people taking action and doing the things necessary in order to make our position better, and we're just ignoring it. Ignoring it is not going to help, right? So we gotta start looking at the ideas like, listen, like I gotta be here a little longer. The technology, I'm gonna hopefully live to 70, 80. That's a good amount of time. That's a nice chunk of change. And you got some time on your hands. God willing, nothing happens to you. You're gonna have a good amount of time on this earth. So why don't you start leveraging that time now? Helping those that are trying to make a change and actually make something better for you and make opportunities easier for you, so that gap, that enormous gap, can maybe start to shrink just a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Share the love just a little bit.
So now I go to my friends and I start talking about this, and they say nothing's going to change. Okay, so we're not going to vote, and we're not going to do petitions. So then I do this, I help promote this thing to raise awareness for the pursuits of raising awareness for humanity versus AI, that we need to prioritize humanity over all of these other things. And we have to get our policymakers to actually start regulating these things and work on the different aspects of what it is that's going on. What do I receive? It's never going to do anything. Why would I even bother? Our policymakers don't do anything. It's just greed. It's just corruption. They don't care about us. All right. I go to my friends. Hey, what do you think that's going on? I get nothing. Okay. So I continuously go around and I try to talk to people in real life. There's nothing. But you know what it is that we do talk about is we talk about the basketball game. We talk about soccer. We talk about the celebrity, the next movie, right? We talk about all of these things, but everything actually impacting our lives, we refuse to have conversations about. And so now I'm in this position to where I'm thinking, okay, so we're not going to vote. We're not going to do petitions. We're not going to do, any sort of movement or to get our representatives interacting. I talk about, hey, let's do these boycotts. Nope, we're not going to do that either because, that's not going to work. Okay. I talk about, hey, maybe we need to start talking about creating a better form of unions. Oh, unions are just bad. It's never going to work. So I'm at this point where every single time I produce or I try to mention something and I try to talk about agency within your own life and all of these different things, all I'm now getting is an overwhelming tsunami of why it's not going to work. The unfortunate reality is that if you have a little brother or little sister or a little son or daughter or grandson or granddaughter, that in a decade and 15 years from now, we are going to hear the exact same thing from them, that there's no entry-level jobs. And they're going to look at us and they're going to say that we had it so easy. They're going to be upset that we didn't do more for them. And it's a travesty. That is going to be such a sad reality. If we're deciding that that is the path that we're going to go on, that there is no hope, that there's no chance for unity. There's no chance for anything that we can do. I think at the end of the day, that's an individual decision that we're making. I don't think anybody is forcing us to decide that.
Yep.
But the fact of the matter is that, yes, things will not get better if we give up. There's no incentive for the people in power to have things get better.
No.
But there's a lot of incentive for us to demand that from them. Going back to the societal stigma, my mom is a hairstylist, and so she has many, many, many clients. I hear this all of the time. They come in and they say, so what do your sons do? She'll be like, well, my youngest son works at a hardware store and my oldest son is a YouTuber. And she receives, oh, I'm so sorry. She's like, why? She's like,
oh, I'm so sorry. What? What does that even mean? Do people not understand the low money that people make on YouTube on these videos? What are we talking about? Oh, I'm so sorry. Come on. What?
When is your son ever going to get a real job? Referencing me.
That's crazy.
When is your son ever going to move out of your? When is your son ever going to move out of your basement? I've been living on my own for 5+ years. I'm sorry that your son isn't taking life serious. Kids these days, right? It's the most insane thing. They have no idea what it is that I'm talking about. They never ask. They never have, they don't actually have any interest whatsoever. And so what do they turn around and do? Well, they use the entire appointment with my mom to just complain about their own kids and how their own kids aren't participating in society and all of these different things. And then, my mom will ask, so what is it that you're doing? And the parent says, I've already given up.
What?
The kid's like 14. I've already.
What? Oh. Oh my gosh. Oh. Listen, as much as technology has connected us, it has also disconnected us, and it has caused for this mindset of just every man for themselves. We are literally out in the wild right now. It's literally the wild, wild west right now. And there's just craziness and mayhem happening all over the place. You have all the distractions in the world, anything that can take you away from the reality and what is happening around you. And you're just saying, you know what? I'm just going to do what I want, and I don't really care who it affects. That has to be because that's the only way that you even get to the point where you have a 14-year-old kid and you say, I already given up. How'd you already give up? This man's life just started. This girl's life just started. This is prime development years, prime time to say like, yo, like we got to start locking in. Like you're going into high school, you got to start locking in so that you're either looking to create a business or because if you don't do that, they're going to be so far behind and then they're just going to give up on their kids. Or they may not even have kids because they're like, well, what's even the point? Listen, guys, this shit is crazy.
It's in my incentive to do the best that I can to try to help out that person, to help out all of the Americans and all of the people worldwide that are facing these issues that maybe don't have the opportunity to even think about these things or speak about these things, to say it. And so what I need from you is to believe it, to have hope, to see these things and want to make a difference, to not just give up. And, I don't know. Last night I filmed this video and filmed it until 2:30 in the morning. Wake up this morning, it turns out that the audio didn't record, right? It's so fantastic. And so now I'm doing this on the 4th of July. I am late to where it is that I'm supposed to go. And I need to get this video out. And I just hate sitting here thinking that it's not doing anything. And again, I know it's helping those individuals out there. But and that is, again, why I'm doing it. But for the overall tone of my generation, I don't see where the voices are out there that are saying, hey, let's not give up. And I don't know. So, again, are the trades a great opportunity for you? Absolutely, but not for everybody. We have to start talking about what are things that we can do to fix the system, not just ways we can succeed individually. Fix the system.
And that's something that, I always preach, right, guys? Like, it's all about the system. It's all about the way that you play the game, understanding the game, and how can you leverage the game. That's the whole point in this channel, right? You always got to stay glitched out. And the reason why is because the system is working against you currently. It's not allowing you to have the opportunities that you should have access to. You have a right to. And in order for you to gain that right, you have to start thinking outside of the system. You have to start thinking, how can I help not only the younger generation, but how can I start affecting the system so that it can start working for me? That's the point. right? The system is supposed to help us get to a point where the system continues and there's progress, right? But the way that the system is leveraging and just constricting and putting that foot on top of the generation below it, it has to get to a point where you're like, no, like get this big, heavy ass boot off my neck. Because at the end of the day, if we don't glitch out this system, if we don't get a way to leverage it and make sure that it's working for us, it is going to be, the level of work, effort, and things that people are going to need to do in order to even succeed, and what even is going to be deemed as success. And I also think that's another thing. The level of where success is right now causes for people to say, oh my God, I need everything. It feeds into the consumerism. It feeds into the greed, right? All the ads, all the pop-ups. And you're just like, yo, what is happening? They're taking away your your physical media for video games, right? And that's the part that people also don't understand. Things that happen in gaming, whether you like it or not, is what happens later on down the line in other parts of the economy, right? When you're talking about stripping away that physical media, how did it lead to a lot of these other subscription-based platforms? I mean, I believe that Xbox Live, unless I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Xbox Live and PS3 or PS Plus, which was free at the time, initially, both of those systems didn't create the subscription, but the subscriptions were a place where you can get content and then create a marketplace around that content, right? And now you're stuck because in order for you to achieve that content, you're going to have to pay that subscription. And they can add on ads, add all these other things to get you to buy all these little microtransactions, which are the same thing as Netflix initially having a free streaming platform and then raising it to $8, and then now taking the ad resistant part of that platform and putting it behind a paywall. So all these little microtransactions, advertisements, and incentives to buy completely distract you from how you should be saying, like, yo, guys, you guys got to take a break. You guys got to pump the brakes on all this. I understand you're trying to make money, but at what point are y'all looking out for me? At what point am I going to want to potentially pass down a video game to my kid and say, hey, like, yo, this game was great. We're going to have to play this, and be able to just put it in the console, load it up, and just be able to play the game because I own that physical copy of the game. Some of these games that, like, let's say like a Black Ops or something like that, if that's fully online with no physical disc, if they decide to shut down the service for it, are you going to be able to access the campaign? Are you going to be able to access zombies? Are you going to be able to access certain other portions of multiplayer, just even split screen? You start putting these games on these digital platforms, and now you lose ownership. And these are the certain things that, as the generations progress, as time progresses, we have to start looking out for. We have to start saying, like, guys, like, this is not working. The family court system, that's another thing, right? The way that the family court system is built right now, it's causing for men to really think like, I don't know if I really want to get into this whole family business. Because at the end of the day, family is a business. Two people get married, that's what you hope the process is. You have two people that get married and, they have kids, and those kids are supposed to now, help create the wealth and success of the family. So at the end of the day, it's going to be a business and it's a partnership that you're getting into, and the incentive to get into that with the consequences that follow. And men are very logical creatures, regardless of education status. Sometimes a lot of men can still say, you know what, like the pros are not really outweighing the cons in this situation, right? But I don't want to make this completely negative. I do think that there's opportunities. I do think if we continue to speak on these topics, if we continue to leverage, the technology that's there, the knowledge that people have, and help push those that are actually trying to make change, I think we can have a light at the tunnel. We can start to deviate from the path and the footsteps that the previous generation has left us, and maybe start to deviate in a path that actually leads to, better places, and better places for those that are coming up in the future. I know a lot of people have a lot of faces now, a lot of power, a lot of influence, and if the influence can go away from being such a negative influence, which I know is the captivating portion of the internet, but it starts to move towards that positive influence, I think there could be a potential shift and start to see that motivation for people to want to do more. But that's that video. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe, and as always, stay glitched.